Alaska, a land of snow and ice and the fastest warming state in the country. That's Justin from Dallas. He's 38, a roofing contractor, and a staunch conservative. He rejects the mainstream science of climate change.
I've thought all along that it's a natural occurrence. I just don't believe that it's something that we're causing or creating.
I brought Justin to Alaska to answer 3 questions. Is the climate changing? Are people to blame? And how urgent is this?
We're on a glacier, man.
My name is David Schechter. I'm a veteran reporter, and now I work for you. I'm taking real people out on the road to get their questions answered, and you're coming along for the ride. This is Verify Road Trip. A trip across Texas was the first half of our journey. We learned that it's widely accepted by climatologists that in a matter of decades, we've spiked our atmosphere with carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases, and that is causing the temperature on Earth to rise. At the midway point of this trip, Justin says the jury is still out.
My main takeaways from this first part of the trip were everybody's against me. No, I'm joking. They weren't really against me, but they had different opinions than me.
This is a route that people have been taking for thousands of years.
We're meeting up with Brian Bretschneider. He's a climatologist with the University of Alaska Fairbanks. And Brian wants us to see a glacier. That means we're going on a hike.
I didn't sign up for this, man.
And it's straight uphill. And it's raining.
Oh, that mountain kicked my butt. That's pretty sweet.
Yeah. It's impressive. From a distance, it's kind of like a postcard. It's like what you always thought a glacier would look like.
By every metric, by every measure, our temperatures are significantly warmer here than they have been decades ago.
This report from 13 U.S. government agencies, including NASA, says since the 1970s, the Earth has warmed 1.5 degrees Fahrenheit, and Alaska has warmed 3.5 degrees. In Alaska, many glaciers, like Portage Glacier, are disappearing.
At one point, about the early 1900s, it filled up this entire valley. There was no lake.
Pretty wild. It's not here anymore.
Yeah, so where we're sitting right now would have been under about 500 to 700 feet of ice.
Oh, it's basically a skyscraper over our heads of ice that's no longer there.
So, I mean, how do we know that that's just not what glaciers do? That, you know, that they don't just go away and then come back? I mean, how long have we been studying these glaciers to know whether or not that's what they do?
Yeah, and that's a great question, because glaciers, they're dynamic. They surge, they retreat, and they've done that for long before people were here. But it's the rate.
The rate. Whereas glaciers might have receded over hundreds or thousands of years, now it's decades. Take a look at this picture from Portage Glacier. For reference, we're about here. And this is where the ice stopped in 2011. Now go back to 1950 to see how much longer the glacier used to be. This report in the journal Climate Dynamics found many glaciers around the world are projected to lose more than 50% of their current ice volume by 2050.
What do the glaciers tell us about climate change? What's the story they tell?
They get tremendous amounts of snow and precipitation, and they kind of are just barely below freezing. And so when you warm things up, even just a little bit, you turn a tremendous amount of that snow into rain.
So it's raining instead of snowing.
In much of the year, it's now raining instead of snowing.
Might be something to be worried about.
Full disclosure, I think our elevational change is what, 4 feet?
Ah, thank God. That's the best news I've heard all day. This is insanely beautiful in here.
It is, isn't it?
Doug Causey is a biologist with the University of Alaska Anchorage. He studies this area, including the salmon, which spawn here just before they die.
So is this salmon right here?
Yes,
Okay.
and these are coho salmon. So the cycle of life is that you breed, then you die, and you end up as fish in
Also,
the
you have
stream.
to pay for college too. That's in there, right?
That's right.
Pay for college.
To show us how warming temperatures here affect living things, Doug wants to take us into the stream to take some measurements. But Justin forgot his boots in the car.
It's gonna be cold. But I was like, hey, when in Alaska, why not roll up your pants and jump in the water?
This is an Alaska rigger, my friend.
Is it cold?
A little bit.
Put it in the water and then you just let it sit. Right now, it's 4 degrees warmer than it was last year.
At this time.
Okay. So that's, okay, so we're talking about
That's one data point.
One data point.
But scientists in Alaska have years of measurements. They've concluded streams are getting warmer. And while it's normal to see dead salmon, this is where they go to die, Doug says what's not normal is how few salmon we're seeing.
Compared to last year, this is half the number of fish we would normally see.
But it could be 1 degree and it'd be a big difference.
Yes. Even that small amount, whether it's 2 or 5 degrees, means they can't go through the reproductive cycle.
So that's not only affecting the glacier.
But now it's also affecting wildlife as well. And when that happens, you're gonna start looking for a reason. And the reason that we concluded to is the climate change is happening.
Primarily, yes. Salmon don't live by themselves in an aquarium. They're part of an ecosystem. And if they're being affected by climate change, the ecosystem is.
He wants the fish to come back. He wants the birds to be able to eat.
Does that concern you?
Yeah, it's starting to concern me. It's, yes, very concerning.
There is nothing that human beings do on land that doesn't depend on soil.
That's Mark Clark, a retired soil scientist with the United States Department of Agriculture.
Soil scientists have a high-tech tool. You've heard of GPSs? This is our GPS. It's a ground-penetrating shovel. High-tech.
I like it.
Mark studies permafrost.
Like a mat. It's like a carpet that you sink a good 3 or 4 inches every time you take a step, it feels like.
You walk on the permafrost and it's like squishy and carpety and very pleasing actually to walk on.
I'm going to excavate a small hole here. I'll give you a little bit of that to look at.
Permafrost is earth and ice that stays frozen even in the summer. It stays frozen under a spongy, active layer of insulation that thaws and refreezes a little each year. Locked away in the permafrost is a massive amount of carbon.
In interior Alaska, some of that carbon is 40,000 years old.
Oh,
I mean,
wow.
it's really old. This old carbon is starting to become exposed. That zone that thaws every summer is now extending further and further down. In some places, it's disappearing.
Justin and I have already learned it's extremely likely that carbon dioxide is the cause of increasing global temperature. And Mark is telling us 50% of the carbon that's on land is locked underground in the Arctic and subarctic. As the permafrost continues to thaw, more and more carbon will come out.
How much is that? Well, it's equivalent to the amount of CO2 that's currently in the air on the planet. It's like a hair trigger right now, and it's just, boy, it's just ready to be pulled. And
Never my
blows
life.
me away.
Yeah,
Holy
it's like,
smokes.
I mean, just to hear that, it's like, wow.
That's a lot
That's a
of
lot.
carbon,
Yeah.
isn't it?
So you get to walk on a glacier.
Hey, we are walking on a glacier.
When we started, Justin did not believe in climate change at all. Throughout our journey, we've learned it's extremely likely that a rapid spike in carbon is the cause of climate change. Unlike in Texas, the effects are more obvious to the eye here. The permafrost is thawing, the fish and wildlife are stressed, and the glaciers are receding.
We have 3 questions, right?
Yeah.
So the first one, is the climate changing in an abnormal way?
I would say so, yeah.
Do you think humans are causing it?
If not causing it, contributing in a major way.
0 to 10, how urgent is this problem for you?
Back I used to be a 2. I'd say I'm probably up to a 6 or 7 at least now.
That's a big change.
It's a big change.
Can you make a connection between being here and seeing it in Alaska and what might happen in Texas one day?
If what's happening here does start happening in Texas one day, it's going to be an issue.
So for Justin, the impact was not the science, but seeing it, that's how he concluded that the climate is changing. But don't take my word for it. Take his.